We've all heard the horror stories about investing in rental properties. A quick YouTube search will send you to some alarming videos. They can scare you half to death and leave you wondering why in the world anyone in their right mind would own rent houses. They make for some very entertaining content, but there is so much you can do to not find yourself in a video like that. And this video is all about how a good rehab protects your long-term cash flow and what exactly makes for a good rehab. I'm going to be breaking down my average $35,000 rehab and telling you everything I can get for that $35,000. So let's get to it. Hi y'all, welcome. If we haven't met before, my name is Lori Livers. I am a real estate investor, and in just under 3 years, I have been able to create enough monthly cash flow to leave my 9-to-5 behind. And this is what allows me to live the life I want to live and not the life I thought I had to live. When you first consider adding a property to your portfolio, you know you're going to need to rehab the place if you're using the BRRRR strategy that I use. This strategy creates the forced appreciation that is important to me to create in every property I add to my portfolio. The houses I see are usually in pretty rough shape, from the foundation to the roof and everything in between. The first thing to know about rehabbing a house is to be realistic with your budget. You cannot do near as much as you would think with a $20,000 budget, and you can do way more than you would probably guess possible with a $30,000 budget. Not all houses need the same things, but all the houses I buy need significant rehab. Most of my rehab projects run right about $35,000 in range. In my first house, I only spent $22,000, and it cost me over the long term because with that budget, I did not address all the things I should have handled. So I will never make that mistake of under rehabbing a property again. Now, something important to know that I want to talk about right up front is that rehab work pricing varies dramatically based on your geographic location. And when I say dramatically, I mean like really, really dramatically. For instance, where I live and invest, we can work on both the interior and the exterior of a house all year long. We don't have extreme winters and we have really long summers. We sometimes get off schedule due to a hurricane, but you see it coming for a week before it hits. So most of the time you can adjust as needed for that kind of stuff. Having such an open calendar makes it easy for tradespeople to work in my area. And as such, there are a lot of skilled tradespeople around. Having so many tradespeople in the area works to my benefit, simply because there is a lot of labor supply to accommodate the demand. Now, of course, this means lower labor costs than you might find someplace else in the country with a smaller amount of skilled people to do this type of work. Now, materials costs rise and fall with market trends. I don't try to time the market. If a deal makes sense, then I will pay what makes sense to rehab a property. I'm not going to sit on a deal over material costs. So while material costs are important to me, it is not something that makes or breaks a deal for me. My deal either works or it doesn't. And if current material cost pushes it out of my acceptable number range, then it's simply no longer a deal for me. It's really just that simple. So, long story short, you may be able to do a lot more rehab than what I'm going to be talking about in this video for $35,000. And you may not be able to do near as much as I can for that same money in your area. Keep that in mind. Can you please take just a sec to hit that like button? It helps me out in a really big way, and I appreciate you more than you know. Now I'm going to break down exactly how I allocate my $35,000 budget. Thanks. So I start by spending $9,400 in exterior work. And this is the power wash of the complete outside of the house, paint everything, replace any siding or trim that has any kind of rot or damage, and I almost always replace the roof, including a wind certificate because we are in a hurricane-prone area. Now, this budget also includes caulking and sealing all the windows and service of the HVAC system. And in doing this work, I am protecting the property in a big way, especially by replacing the roof. And I am bringing the house up to a reasonable curb appeal standard. No one wants to live in an ugly house, but ugly or not, the roof and windows cannot leak. So this is how I spend my exterior budget. Next, I move on to the interior and I spend $12,400 on my base interior work. And this includes replacing and repairing any damaged drywall, making any small adjustments to the overall floor plan. This is something small, like putting up a wall to create a laundry room. This is not a major rework of the floor plan. This is smaller changes that make for a smarter floor plan. Within this budget, I also replace or add ceiling fans in all the living spaces and the primary bedrooms. I replace the lighting fixtures throughout the house. I demo out the old flooring and replace it with vinyl plank flooring throughout. This also includes a full interior paint with 3 colors, a wall color, a trim color, and the ceiling color. And of course, it includes the final cleanup. In my $35,000 budget, I always allow $1,800 for a new electrical panel. Most of the older houses I purchase have an electrical panel that was super popular in the 1980s and even earlier. It is also a very well-known fire risk, so I always assume I need to replace the electrical panel unless the inspection report reveals that it's already been taken care of. Now, there are always some dead outlets and some dead switches, so that's included in this part of the budget as well. Next, I allocate $4,700 in kitchen work. And this includes basic rental appliances like a range, cooktop, oven combination, a dishwasher, and a new vent hood. This is a repair and strip and paint all the cabinetry. I install granite countertops with an undermount sink and a new faucet, and I also replace the garbage disposal for all about $4,700. In this basic $35,000 rehab, I also have a budget of $5,450 for the bathroom. Now, this pricing is for 2 small full baths, and what I do in bathrooms is I demo them down to these studs. I repair and replace any plumbing deficiencies. I replace the bathtubs and tile surrounds for showers, replace the toilets, replace the exhaust fans, and replace the vanities and light fixtures. And that gives me 2 really good high quality bathrooms for my rental properties. Now, in my budget, I always leave $1,250 in contingency because things will come up. When you start getting into older homes, you just can't know what you're going to find. But I promise you are going to find something. In my most recent rehab, we found some galvanized plumbing. Now, it wasn't leaking, but let me tell you something about old galvanized plumbing. It absolutely will leak. So I knew that this is a good place to invest my contingency budget, was in replacing that galvanized plumbing because it's saving me a lot of future problems. I also had to put some of that budget towards some insulation as well. And those are the 2 things that my contingency budget went for in that property. Now, I always leave room for contingency, and you will be glad it is there when you need it. And you will need it. Now, I have done this exact rehab several times over, and I am really comfortable with the result I can get with this type of investment. This is the number I have in mind when I am walking a property that I'm considering adding to my portfolio. So this rehab budget impacts the purchase price, the offer that I will make on a house dramatically. It is important to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers. I know in the past, when I have spent less on my rehab, I have run into issues because if I don't spend enough on my rehab right up front, I am creating future irritation for myself. And I don't want to create future irritation for myself. So I've learned my lessons the hard way, and now I always do the right things right up front. They were hard lessons to learn, and I hope you don't have to learn them that way. Something I always have in mind is that I know that when I am making my purchasing decision based on this rehab budget, I cannot spend any more than this and keep my numbers where they need to be. Budget matters, and in a really, really big way. Never lose sight of how important the budget is. The best way I know how to not ever lose sight of this budget is just not get emotional about a house. Always make sure you're looking at it for what it is, a long-term investment to provide you with cash flow on an ongoing basis. Make smart decisions from an unemotional place, and you will never be sorry you made a great decision. It's easy to get swept up and pretend you're on HGTV, picking out the prettiest tile you haven't used yet. But it doesn't work that way in real life. You are not on HGTV. Even HGTV doesn't work that way in real life. So don't forget that. But if you do happen to be on HGTV, absolutely drop it down into those comments and let me know, because I would love to watch. I think it looks like so much fun. When I am first walking a property, What I'm looking for is any sign of anything that would blow this budget up. And that usually comes down to big structural issues. Now, big structural issues are usually pretty easy to spot once you get accustomed to looking for them. Now, these are things like the rotting wood you see that's causing ceilings to sag, or broken foundations that you can literally feel when you're walking through a house. If I am purchasing a house that has either of these types of extreme issues, and I will buy those houses too, I make sure I get big enough discounts off the purchase price of the house to cover not only the repair expense, but also the carrying costs of paying for the house while the house is under rehab. Now, those types of issues must be paid for by the seller in the purchase price of the house. And this is why they're not included in my average rehab budget. Your regular rehab work cannot take place while these big structural items are being taken care of. So be sure to keep your carrying costs in mind when you get into these types of properties, because this big structural work will absolutely affect your timeline. I hope that makes sense. This basic $35,000 rehab is where my plan starts. However, it often changes as I work through a project. For instance, if we uncover a plumbing issue in the kitchen, when we go to replace a sink and dishwasher, we must of course address those issues. But that work is not in the budget anywhere, especially if we've already eaten up the contingency. So I have to change something up to accommodate for the extra expense. The first place I will cut is in my flooring. If I find myself over budget due to some unforeseen thing, I will go with carpet in bedrooms and not the hard surface flooring I prefer. Carpet is much less expensive than the hard surface flooring I prefer, but I will not hesitate to put carpet in every bedroom if I have to keep the budget in line. Because I get an extensive inspection and have a contractor partner with a really good eye, I don't often run into many unforeseen things that cause me to need to adjust my budget in more significant ways. But in the beginning, I had to adjust my budget several times. So I've learned a lot. Adjusting the budget is a normal and regular thing. Don't be surprised or ever disappointed if you find yourself in that same situation. Every single rental property investor has been there, I promise. And having to adjust the budget on the fly is a normal part of being a buy and hold investor. I didn't touch too much on the inspection report and how important it is in finalizing your rehab plan. I will get a video out soon on that because it is really important to understand your inspection report well before you rehab a property. Spending the money on a good quality rehab up front protects your cash flow in really significant ways. First, it is critical to rehab well so that you get your planned ARV, your after repair value. If you don't get your planned ARV, you could have to bring cash to your refi closing. And you do not want to have to put money towards your loan when you should have put that money in your rehab. Second, it is critical to rehab well so that your tenants are happy in the property and you don't have to spend cash correcting mistakes you made in a bad rehab. Your property is only going to be producing cash flow when somebody is living in it and paying you rent. For me, cash flow is why I invest, so nothing is more important to me than my cash flow. Spending the right amount of money up front in the rehab protects my future cash flow by making my house a great choice for tenants who can enjoy living in the home. Anything less is not going to work long term. Let me know what you think of this budget. Are you surprised at how much or even how little a $35,000 rehab budget gets me in my rental properties? Let's chat in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have a few more minutes, I am waiting for you over here in the video you see on your screen right now. I hope you could come hang out for a few more minutes. But until I see you there, bye y'all. I am a real estate? When you first consider a property for your portfolio, you know you're going to need. Oh my gosh.